Did the Florida Keys have ancient visitors no one expected, people not from the Florida mainland, but possibly from far-off shores? For decades, archaeologists believed the Keys were simply an extension of Florida's pre-Columbian history. But recent breakthroughs in ancient DNA are rewriting that script. What if the earliest settlers were part of a forgotten migration? What does that mean for our understanding of coastal America's ancient past? Before we start, I'm on a road to get 1,000 subscribers as a small channel. If you want to help me, please subscribe. Now let's dive into one of Florida's biggest archaeological surprises. The Florida Keys today are a paradise of turquoise waters and coral reefs, but thousands of years ago they were a very different landscape. During the last ice age, sea levels were far lower, connecting many of the Keys to the mainland. Early human groups could have walked or paddled to these islands with relative ease. For years, scholars assumed that the first settlers came from nearby Florida, slowly expanding as hunter-gatherers into the archipelago. After all, the Calusa and Tequesta people who greeted Europeans had deep roots in the region, but the archaeological record had gaps. Shell mounds dotted the coasts, and strange underwater burial sites hinted at a more complex story. Were these clues of a migration from elsewhere? Could the Keys have once been a stepping stone in a much wider network of coastal movement? The mystery lingered until ancient DNA began to crack it open. Unlocking ancient secrets from the Florida Keys wasn't easy. The hot, humid climate is brutal on genetic material. DNA, especially from bones and teeth, breaks down quickly in wet soil, leaving only fragments behind. For years, this made it nearly impossible to study the ancestry of early Floridians using genetics. But a revolution in ancient DNA technology changed that. Scientists developed a technique called hybridization capture, a method that uses molecular hooks to pull out specific pieces of degraded DNA. Like fishing with tiny baited lines, researchers targeted over 1 million points in the genome known to vary between populations. It allowed them to sequence even the tiniest remains. Suddenly, bones that had been silent for thousands of years could speak again. With these tools, researchers turned their focus to burial sites in the Keys and across coastal Florida. What they found would challenge everything we thought we knew. The big discoveries didn't come from treasure-laden shipwrecks, but from shell mounds, coastal ridges, and even underwater graves. At places like Minnesota Key offshore and Shell Key, archaeologists uncovered bones in peat-preserved burial sites submerged beneath the sea. Radiocarbon dating showed some were over 7,000 years old, far older than anyone expected for coastal Florida. Inland, Mount Key revealed the grandeur of the Calusa civilization, a complex society of fisher kings who engineered canals and ceremonial centers long before European contact. But even more intriguing were the smaller, more ancient finds, skeletal remains of people who predated the Calusa by millennia. These weren't just locals. Something in their burial styles, tools, and now, thanks to DNA genetic makeup, suggested outside origins. The scientists carefully extracted DNA from bones taken from 16 different sites, including the Florida Keys, and what they saw in the sequences pointed away from Florida and towards something much larger. With the DNA in hand, scientists ran a principal components analysis, or PCA, a kind of genetic map that clusters individuals by ancestry. What they found shocked them. The earliest inhabitants of the Florida Keys didn't fall within expected North American patterns. Instead, their DNA placed them closer to ancient populations from the Caribbean and Central America. One individual, buried thousands of years ago beneath what is now shallow ocean, showed strong similarities to archaic groups once living in the Greater Antilles. This suggests a coastal migration route that didn't move inland from Florida, but flowed northward through the Caribbean and up into the Keys. The Keys, once thought to be the edge of an expansion from Florida, may actually have been an entry point, a genetic and cultural front line. This finding flips the old story. Rather than isolated Floridian pioneers, these early islanders were part of a vast coastal network. Digging deeper into the data, researchers found that these ancient individuals carried genetic markers rarely seen in Florida's mainland populations. Instead, their DNA resembled that of early Caribbean archaic groups, nomadic seafarers who likely moved along island chains in dugout canoes. Their mitochondrial DNA passed down through mothers told a story of maternal lines tied not to the southeastern US, but to ancient populations in places like Cuba and possibly even the Yucatan. This surprising link suggested that the Florida Keys weren't settled by land-based hunters moving south, but by maritime people moving north. These groups could have used ocean currents and island-hopping strategies, sailing from the northern Caribbean into the Keys thousands of years before Spanish ships ever arrived. It was a bold claim, one that repositions the Keys from historical side note to center stage in the story of ancient American migration. And it wasn't the only twist. As scientists analyzed more individuals from the Keys in southern Florida, a clear pattern emerged. There weren't just one, but two major migration waves into the region, each separated by thousands of years and distinct cultural traits. The first wave came around 7,000 years ago, made up of archaic hunter-gatherers, with deep Caribbean or Mesoamerican ties. These early people relied on fishing, foraging, and simple tools. Then, much later, around 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, a second wave arrived. These newcomers brought pottery, agriculture, and new burial practices. Their DNA aligned more closely with ceramic age groups from South America, especially Arawakan-speaking populations. Yet despite centuries of cohabiting in the region, these two groups show almost no signs of genetic mixing. It's as if they live side by side, but never truly together. Cultural, linguistic, or territorial barriers may have kept them apart. The reasons are still unclear, but the genetic divide is undeniable. In most places where ancient peoples meet, their genes eventually mix. But in the Florida Keys, this didn't happen. Only one individual in the entire study showed even a trace, about 13%, of mixed ancestry. That suggests the two waves of migrants, the archaic seafarers and the later ceramic age farmers, mostly lived apart. Maybe they settled different islands. Maybe they spoke different languages or followed customs that discouraged intermarriage. Or maybe the rugged geography of the Keys, with its scattered land and shallow waters, kept communities isolated. Whatever the reason, the DNA paints a rare picture, two ancient worlds side by side, but separate. To trace these lineages further, scientists turn to mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome data, the maternal and paternal threads in our family tree. The archaic individuals carried haplogroups like D1 and C1d, ancient maternal signatures also found in early North and Central American populations. Meanwhile, the later ceramic age settlers had different genetic stamps, B2, C1b, and C1c, more common among indigenous peoples of northern South America and the Amazon. These contrasting markers reinforce the idea of two distinct ancestries. The Keys weren't settled once and forever. They were visited, inhabited, and revisited by very different peoples, each carrying a different story in their blood. This discovery changes how we understand Florida's ancient history. The Keys weren't just a southern extension of mainland cultures, they were a crossroads, a place where ocean-going pioneers arrived from distant shores, bringing knowledge, traditions, and identities unlike any seen before. These findings hint at broader coastal migrations long overlooked in favor of inland models. But many questions remain. How far did these sea routes stretch? Were the Keys a final stop or a gateway further north? Future excavations and genetic studies, especially from submerged sites, may fill in the blanks. One thing's clear, the past is more connected than we ever imagined. The Florida Keys, long seen as a quiet edge of ancient America, now stand at the center of a bold new narrative, one shaped not just by artifacts, but by the DNA hidden in forgotten bones. These islands tell a story of dual migrations, cultural resilience, and ancient seafaring skills that rival our modern imagination. So what other secrets lie beneath the waves waiting to be revealed? Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you enjoy uncovering stories like this, check out the Patreon for more behind-the-scenes content, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious.